there. Okay. We can get started a little bit early here. You want to introduce Dr. Tuttle? Okay. Yay! All right, Dr. Tuttle, you can start. I'm going to mute the sound here.
So can you make me? Can you make me able to share my screen? Maybe.
Yes, you should be able to share. You should be able to. I have multiple participants can share. Yeah, you need. Right. I think you need to enable something on your end. I think because we've got multiple. There you go. There you go. You got it. Okay, I'm gonna mute you. I'm gonna mute you, and you're on, Dr. Tuttle. So you'll be able to talk to the crowd, but you won't hear us.
All right, sounds good. I got half an hour, right? Okay.
Yes, you do until 2:30. Half an hour.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I want to go ahead and get started here. And it's a delight to be with you at the Raleigh Veg Fest. This is Dr. Will Tuttle. I'm in California. And we'll be, in a couple of weeks, jumping into our little van and heading east. And we'll be coming to all the way across, actually all the way to Florida, coming across the southern United States and doing lectures in many different cities, including lots of veg fests in Florida and maybe some other states as well. But it's a delight to be with you and to share the vegan message of liberation and freedom and compassion for all living beings. So I'll go ahead and just get started. And I think one of the main things I want to emphasize here is I'll just put this up quickly in the beginning, is the good news that all of us have been given the gift of a physical body. And that's great to have the gift of a physical body. And so we can live our lives here on this beautiful and abundant earth. I hope you have noticed by now that the earth is beautiful. And we have a physical body that does not require any animals to suffer to get all the nutrients that we need to thrive and celebrate our lives here. And I think that's the thing that we want to start out with at the very beginning, to understand that clearly and deeply. And that, of course, the flip side of that is that, unfortunately, all of us have been born into a society where from the time we're little infants, we've been compelled to sit at the table and eat the flesh of animals and secretions from animals that not only cause tremendous suffering to these animals as well as environmental devastation, but are also not very healthy for us in the long run. And actually, in many ways, even in the short run. So one of the most beneficial things anyone can do is to question the official narrative in our society about food, and specifically about eating foods that are derived from animals, because not only is it unnecessary and cause enormous suffering, but it creates what I refer to as the boomerang effect, which is the ancient spiritual teaching of the golden rule. Whatever goes out comes back, and whatever we put out there, as we sow, we reap. And so the golden rule basically is based on the idea not do to others what we would not want to have done to ourselves. And I think all of us know that we would not want to have to endure what these poor cows and pigs and chickens and turkeys and ducks and geese and other animals have to endure in order to end up on our plates. So if we would not want to have that experience ourselves, we wouldn't want, if we have a companion animal like a dog or a cat, we would not want him or her to go through that either, obviously, because we have a basic core of empathy and kindness and compassion. And we also know what it is like to suffer. Is there anyone here who has never suffered? I don't think there probably is. I think, we've all known what it's like to suffer. So it's very important to not cause to others what we would not want to have to experience ourselves. And so this is, I think, really the heart and soul of what the whole vegan movement is about. It's about doing the best we can to create a world of kindness and compassion. And the good news is that world of kindness and compassion for others is also a world of health and freedom for us. So when we understand that, we can begin to change our lives and question the official narratives in our society. So we see from this basic image that I have up here that our physical health is connected to our spiritual health, it's connected to our cultural health, to our psychological health, and to environmental health. They're all interconnected. And I think when we understand that, we begin to realize the power that we have as an individual in our society to contribute not only to our own health, but to the health of our world. And the thing to understand underlying all of this is that animal agriculture, which has been with us for about 10,000 years, it's not very old, really. And when you think of the many hundreds of thousands or millions of years that life has been going on here on this planet, and we human beings have been here, 10,000 years is a relatively recent thing. And so we started about 10,000 years ago to herd animals. And that it really was a war. It began a war against animals and against nature and against each other also. And it started the destruction of environments. We know now, scientists understand this, it's pretty obvious that it was really the herding of animals that started the great desertification, like the creating these deserts like we have today, the Sahara Desert in northern Africa, and a lot of the deserts in the Middle East were grasslands that were just damaged so severely by overgrazing that now they've been turned into deserts. And we see this happening even today. The spread of deserts is one of the environmental problems that animal agriculture is causing, but also the destruction of oceans, the cutting down of rainforests, the pollution of water, the depletion of water, the pollution of the air. All of these things are driven by animal agriculture. So the single greatest gift we can give to our ecosystems is to move to a plant-based way of eating. And when we do that, we really reduce dramatically our environmental footprint. And instead of causing a huge amount of destruction to ecosystems, we radically reduce that. According to, for example, the National Academy of Sciences, they say it's about 10 to 1. In other words, if we move to a plant-based diet, we reduce the amount of pollution, air and water pollution, soil erosion, and so forth that we're causing by 10 times. I mean, that's tremendous. So we realize that if everyone on Earth were to do this, we could use 10 times less land, create 10 times less water, air, and soil pollution and erosion and destruction. We could basically clean up our Earth. So this is a really important point, very positive thing to understand. So just let's everybody just do this and share this idea with other people, that by moving to a organic, especially is a really good idea, organic, whole food, plant-based way of eating, that we destroy the, well, we don't, I mean, we heal, I guess the better word, we heal the destructive tendencies in our society of the environment, the main one being in animal agriculture, and also the mentality of animal agriculture, because that's the underlying problem, is the mentality. The underlying idea in animal agriculture is that we own other beings as property, like they're just a sack of cement, something we don't even care about. We don't care about the cows and pigs and chickens because we're going to kill them and eat them. So they suffer terribly because of that. And so this mentality of not caring about others and not caring about the violence that we're inflicting on them, it boomerangs back on us, and we find that we ourselves are experiencing what they're experiencing, in the sense of we find our freedoms being eroded, and we find our own health being eroded. So that's where we connect with cultural health, which is basically the idea that if we want to have a healthy society, animal agriculture destroys the health of our society. And so unfortunately, that's something that we have to just realize, that animal agriculture destroys the health of our society because it causes starvation and hunger, which are the driving forces behind war and conflict in the world. We cause whole armies of our brothers and sisters to have to do the terrible work that we would not want to have to do, to stab animals all day, or to impregnate them on rape racks and steal their babies and kill their babies. And we do all these terrible things to these animals by the millions every day. So this is the foundation of our society. And yet we all pretend that we're good, loving, kind, caring people who just like to have a hamburger and a hot dog and a cheeseburger and so forth, and cause tremendous suffering to not just to animals and to wildlife and to indigenous people who have their habitats destroyed, but also to the workers who have to kill the animals and harm them, and to the hungry people who are forced into starvation because most of the food that we're growing, about good 80% of the grain that we grow, we don't feed to people, we feed to animals, and then we kill the animals, and so it's very inefficient and wastes most of the nutrients. And then we're overfishing the oceans to feed cows with fish, for example, to make them give more milk. And this is devastating to the oceans. And so everything is interconnected. We have the collapse of ocean ecosystems, which is causing a lot of people to not be able to find food. And so all of these things are interconnected. And then we have finally the connection with our physical health on the physical level. And this is something that is critical to understand, because eating animal-based foods, we're going to be have a much higher risk of diabetes and obesity and osteoporosis and liver disease, kidney disease, the autoimmune diseases that are affecting many people, Alzheimer's, dementia. These are all diseases, chronic diseases, that are linked with diets that are high in animal-based foods, especially, in fact, it's very ironic, really, the three foods that most people think are the healthiest in animal-based foods are really the worst. I know quite a few people say, well, I'm going to stop eating red meat and I'm just going to eat a little dairy and a little, maybe some fish and eggs. Those three things: dairy, fish, and eggs. And actually, dairy, fish, and eggs concentrate more toxins and are more toxic and harmful to our health than anything, really, else we could possibly eat in terms of animal-based foods and certainly plant-based foods, because they have a huge amount of naturally occurring toxins. Like, for example, in dairy products, the main protein in cow's milk is called casein. It's a very large, unwieldy molecule that we have a hard time breaking down. We don't have the enzyme that little calves have, which is called renin, that breaks down the casein molecule. We don't have that. So casein is now well understood to be the driving force behind a lot of the problems that children are having routinely, like runny noses and sore throats and earaches and tonsillitis. And I had an appendicitis when I was a kid. I had to have my appendix removed. Type 1 diabetes, a lot of autoimmune diseases. This huge protein causes our immune system to be confused and start to attack itself. So there's lots of problems, Crohn's disease, we can go on and on. So the hospitals are really filled up in many ways by people who are eating dairy products. And it's unnecessary. If we're not little calves, it's a good test you can actually do if you want to find out if actually dairy products are healthy for you. And that test that you can do yourself, actually, when you get home after the Veg Fest, is you go home and go into your bathroom. And if you go into the bathroom and turn on the light, and then just look in the mirror, and if you see a little calf, then you are one of the people who should be eating dairy products. If you see a human being, then it's actually not food for you and will make you sick for sure. So that's a good test. Another delusion people have is eating eggs, which are the highest concentrated form of cholesterol on planet Earth. And they're not healthy, and they concentrate a lot of toxins and misery. Hens are really hyper confined and brutally treated, and so staying away from eggs is also a very intelligent thing. And fish, again, fish concentrate toxins because all of the heavy metals, PCBs, dioxin, nuclear radiation, the chemical pesticide, herbicide, and fungicide residues, all of that stuff, all ends up, fertilizer residues, all ends up in the oceans, in the water. And so these animals that live in the water, like fishes and shrimp and clams and lobsters and all these marine beings, they concentrate toxins in their bodies hundreds of thousands of times and very often millions of times more in their bodies than in the water. So, and then these animals are fed to cows and pigs and chickens, which even further concentrates the toxins. So stay away from animal-based foods if you want to avoid cancer, especially breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, and the other types of cancer, as well as heart disease and all the other diseases I've been talking about, the nervous system diseases, dementia, Alzheimer's, and so forth. All of these are driven by animal-based foods. The highest quality proteins that we can eat, and the carbohydrates and the fiber and vitamins and minerals all come from plants. None of them come from animals. That's something that's very important to understand, that animals don't make protein. They don't have the fats that they have all come from plants, and any version that's in an animal is much less healthy than in a plant. Plants make healthy amino acid proteins that are relatively simple and easy for us to break down and metabolize. But when animals eat those plants, they make their muscles and so forth, and their milk and their eggs out of those plants. And the difficulty that we have in breaking those down, because they're very large, unwieldy proteins, they create a lot of acid when we metabolize them, and the acid builds up in our tissues and in our blood, and the hospitals again are filled up because of people with acidified tissues. That leads to arthritis and cancer and osteoporosis. Lots of diseases come from acidified tissues. So again, proteins come from plants, fats come from plants, carbohydrates. There's no carbohydrates in animal-based foods. These are the natural fuel that our bodies are designed to run on. It's a clean burning, wonderful fuel, carbohydrates. They burn to carbon dioxide and water. It's fantastic. So remember that. Remember that plants are the source of all the nutrients that we need to be healthy. All the minerals, of course, come from the soil, come from plants. They don't come from animals. All the vitamins come from plants. Vitamin B12, of course, comes from bacteria, and we can get that in some plants, and especially there's different weeds that live in the water that concentrate and create vitamin B12. We can also just have B12 supplements. It's made by bacteria. Vitamin D, of course, comes from the sun, so it's good to make sure you're getting plenty of sunshine there, and it's metabolized by the sun. So these are the elements of our physical health. The main thing to understand is that we can get all the nutrients that we need to thrive and celebrate here from plants. Our psychological health and our spiritual health are critically important. And again, animal agriculture causes us to sow seeds of misery and violence for others, and creates really in our entire society a lot of attitudes that are not in our best interest. The attitudes of disconnectedness, of might makes right, of the strong dominating and exploiting the weak, the attitude of the domination of the sacred feminine dimension of life and consciousness. And all of these are devastating to our basic health. So psychologically, animal agriculture probably does its greatest harm on our psychological health and on the landscape of our consciousness, as well as on our spiritual health. Spiritual health and ethical health are interconnected at a very deep level. And so if we're going to insist on abusing other living beings who are as sentient as we are, we're going to reap the rewards of that, which are a world where we find that we have a lot of conflict and disharmony and suffering among humans because we're sowing those seeds with animals. All right, so I think it's important to understand these things. I want to talk a little bit about the history of this and the basic idea that about 10,000 years ago, as I said, we began to imprison animals for food, and that led to the reduction of animals. This was in Iraq, what is today Iraq. It started with wild sheep and wild goats, and then eventually moved to wild cows and other animals. And it created a whole system of violence. And we can see in this, what I'm just putting up here, It led to the arising of a wealthy elite class. We call them the kings. They were known as, if you read the Old Testament, for example, or the ancient Greek myths, we have the kings. They're always trying to increase their wealth. Animals are wealth. So we have the beginning of capitalism as a system, an economic system. Capita is the old Latin word that means head, as in head of sheep and goats and cows and other animals. We have the beginning of war. There had never been war until we started to imprison animals for food. The oldest word for war on planet Earth is gavya, the old Sanskrit word that means the desire for more cows. That led directly to slavery, which we still have today. Trafficking of people is more now than there was even in the slavery days. So we shouldn't think there's no more slavery. There's a tremendous amount of slavery. The domination of women, the domination of the sacred feminine. Women were seen merely as breeders because that's what animal agriculture does. It reduces the feminine to mere breeder status. And then boys are harmed because they're taught to emulate the role model of a hard, tough, disconnected male capable of violence against animals and against women and against other rival herders. And so we have this whole system that's really a vicious cycle of violence, disease, and environmental devastation. And now after 10,000 years, we can see what's happening is we have nuclear weapons and we have more tracking and surveilling of human beings. We're being turned into livestock ourselves in many, many ways. So it's critical that we understand this and move away from animal agriculture, stop buying meat, dairy products, and eggs, go vegan for the animals and for the future. So this is the wonderful alternative. We're not just critiquing a system that's obsolete. We have a wonderful alternative. And the vegan living is based on ahimsa, which is the old Sanskrit word that means nonviolence. And the manifestation of that is a local, organic, whole food, plant-based way of eating and living. And we can all do that. I've been doing it since 1980, so that's 42 years. And I always say the smartest thing I ever did besides marrying my wonderful wife, Madeline, was going vegan back in 1980. So it leads to more abundance, healthier ecosystems, healthier economies, healthier people, more freedom, justice, and equality, more harmony and peace. And it's a very virtuous cycle. The more compassion we share with animals and ecosystems, the more sustainability we experience and the more equality and harmony in our relationships with each other. So this is the underlying idea. It's something we can all learn and we can all contribute to. And this kind of sums it all up. No one wants to acknowledge the cow in the room, which is animal agriculture. Diabetes rates have doubled. There are dead zones in the ocean. The rainforests are disappearing. I'm worried about the next pandemic. Why is our society so violent? Global warming is unstoppable. My doctor says I need angioplasty. 800 million people are starving. California is running out of water. One single industry causes so much harm. That's really the thing to understand, is that we can stop supporting that industry and we can start supporting ways of eating that honor these living beings. These are paintings by my wonderful wife, Madeline. She tunes into the animals and paints them. And we can see when we look into the faces of these beings that there's someone there. There's a being who has interests, and her interests are as important to her as my interests are to me. We can also see that we're designed to eat these beautiful, delicious-looking foods that the earth freely gives. Fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and grains and legumes and potatoes, sweet potatoes, squashes. There's so many wonderful foods that are filled with healthy nutrients. There's no reason for us to imprison beings. When we look at these foods, we have a natural sense of yum, yum, yum. This looks really delicious, right? But when we see this, we don't think, oh my gosh, I can't wait to bite into her, right? That's completely not a human response. That's a programmed demonic response, really. And so we're trained in many ways in our society to abandon the basic wisdom that dwells within our minds and within our bodies, which is to eat plant-based foods and instead to attack with knives these beautiful beings and stab them and then eat their flesh. And they're in terror and pain, and we're eating terror and pain. How can we ever build a temple of peace and harmony if the bricks that we're using are made from misery, violence, and toxicity. So this is the thing to understand, that these animals not only are beautiful, they have their own purposes, they have their own lives. And if we look deeply into these beings, we see there's someone there who, just like us, has interests that are important to her or to him as my interests are to me. So if we pay people to imprison them and stab them and harm them, we're basically creating a situation where the same thing will happen to us. So instead of that, to allow these animals to celebrate their lives in nature as they have done for millions of years. And then when we do that, we will be at the level uh, ethically and cognitively and emotionally and spiritually that we can actually create a world of peace and harmony for ourselves as well. Look at these beautiful otters, how they celebrate their lives in nature. And again, a lot of these animals, like these otters, are on the brink of extinction because we're overfishing the oceans, we're stealing all of their food from them, we're polluting the water, and so they're dying off. And it's really a tragedy that's unnecessary. There's no reason for us to be attacking the oceans and these animals because there's no nutrients in them that we need to be healthy that we can't get from plants. These animals, like giraffes, are going into extinction right now. The giraffe is a beautiful animal. It's the tallest animal, has the largest heart of any land animal, has the highest perspective. It's a representative and a symbol of compassionate living and communication. When we were in Africa recently, we saw directly how so many of the animals in Africa, like the lions and elephants and giraffes and hippopotamuses and rhinoceroses and all these animals, are going into extinction because now there's Wendy's and McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Burger King getting set up in Africa. And so now there's farmers who are growing grain to feed these animals, and they don't want the elephants, they don't want the lions, and so they're killing them all off. And these animals are now being attacked by farmers. It's a war against nature. And so these animals are going into extinction. Just like the buffalo almost went into extinction 100 years ago because of animal agriculture, because of bringing cows out and grazing cows, and we wanted to get rid of all the buffalo. They were down to just a few, and they're still just a fraction of what they were once. So the whole idea is that by abandoning this depraved practice of animal agriculture, we can come home to our hearts and create a world of harmony and peace for these beings. They can birth their little babies like these turtles and swim through the waters and celebrate their lives as they did for millions of years before we started to imprison them. Horses right now, especially, like when we go to some of these places like Whole Foods and other stores where they sell what they call free-range meat. Organic free-range meat is one of the worst things we can eat because they're killing all the horses now in the American West because of the growing popularity of free-range meat. And so instead of having cows stuck away in these stinking feedlots, which is terrible, they have them out on the land, which is also terrible because they still end up at the slaughterhouse hanging upside down by one leg, having their throats cut. But now, since they're out on the land, the ranchers don't want to have any other animals. So get rid of and kill all the coyotes, all the wolves, all the bears, all the bobcats, all the mountain lions, all the horses, all the turtles, all the prairie dogs. I mean, everything. It's a war against nature more than ever when we have free-range animals being sold for food. So there's no way to eat animal-based foods without causing a lot of violence and misery. We have all these beautiful paintings by Madeline, I think, to kind of show. Here's the little koala bears when we saw them when we were down in Australia, hanging onto the earth for dear life because we're destroying the planet, and it's completely unnecessary. We could allow all these animals to celebrate their lives without losing them. So thank you very much for your kind attention. I'll go through a few more of these beautiful paintings. All these beings are looking at us and hoping that we will awaken out of the trance, the cultural trance that causes us to cause so much suffering. This is some of the books that I've written. The World Peace Diet is the main one. I really encourage you, if you find any of this at all interesting, and if you're interested in going deeper with the vegan philosophy, the World Peace Diet has been called the Bible of veganism. It's been published in 17 languages around the world. It was a #1 Amazon bestseller in 2010, and we have we have copies of that are available, of course, online and in bookstores. Our Daily Veg Inspirations, which are quotes from the World Peace Diet, one for every day of the year, and we have the book Circles of Compassion, essays connecting issues of justice, Buddhism and veganism, essays connecting spiritual awakening and animal liberation, the World Peace Diet audiobook, Your Inner Islands on Developing Spiritual Intuition, guided meditations, music and art. It's all on our website, willtuttle.com or worldpeacediet.com. So we look forward to seeing you. We have a website, circleofcompassion.org, if you want to join our prayer circle for compassion and be part of the awakening of humanity here. So I'd like to go ahead and just thank all of you for your kind attention, and know that we are on the right side of history, that we're living a life that is in harmony with our true nature, in harmony with the earth, in harmony with the wisdom that shines always in our hearts. And even though when we look out and we see society and we see so many people who are lost in delusion, who have been wounded by the cultural program of eating animal agriculture, we can be a shining example ourselves of another way of living. We can be an example not only of kindness and compassion, but of health and radiant health and sustainability and freedom. So thank you very much. It's great to see you, and I appreciate all your efforts. And I'm pretty much at the end of my time here, I think. It's about
Thank you, Dr.
2:30.
Tuttle. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been great to share a few ideas. Thanks.
All right, we'll see you soon at more festivals in the future. Thank you so much for being with us and sharing your wisdom.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.